welcome everyone to the webinar, our first ever GitOps Masterclass. So we started this series. We're gonna kind of have like kind of a irregular series here, where we take Argo CD, right? Everything you need to know about GitOps, but we're going to really dive deep into one particular subject each time we have a masterclass. So the idea being is that maybe you're already familiar with Argo CD, maybe you're running it either like in a lab environment, or even if you're running it in production. We have the idea is that we take everyone deep into a particular topic, beyond just kind of like getting started, type or basic overview type of things. So that's the idea. Masterclass. Today we're going to be talking about Argo CD projects, obviously Argo CD app projects. But before we get started here, I want everyone here to drop into the chat, say hello. Angelica's welcoming everyone here. My trusty sidekick here. Let me know where you're coming from. San Diego. All right, San Diego. Hopefully the weather's better than it is here in LA. It's a little muggy here. Czech. From Greece. Austria. Willkommen. Oh, Nigeria, Norway, Denver, Deutschland auch. Awesome. From Phoenix to India. Where in India, though? India's a pretty big country. So Boise, Idaho, from LA, Orange County. All right, my fellow Southern Californian here. From Brazil. Awesome. Looks like we're bienvenido, Spain. Awesome. So cool. So the Ukraine, I don't know any Ukrainian. I just know Privyet. Sri Lanka. All right, awesome. So looks like we're worldwide here, which is awesome. It's cool to have everyone coming in from all over the world. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna be here for about 90 minutes, right? So it's not your typical 1 hour webinar here. We're gonna be here for about 90 minutes, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, depending on how fast we get through this. We get through the workshop portion of this. Also, depending on how many questions, or if I feel like I'm getting, if I want to get deep dive into anything, anything any further. It also depends on how tired I am. So, but about 90 minutes. I'm going to promise about 90 minutes. But we have time to go a little over if we need to. And so, yes, Privyet is Russian. That's just all I know. Spasiba. So let's let's get started here. Let's talk about Akuity, right? So this is an Akuity webinar, and Akuity and the Akuity platform was from the creators of the Argo and Cargo project. And so Hong, Jesse, and Alex, our founders, actually were at Intuit when Intuit made the strategic direction to go, one, all in on cloud, and two, all in on Kubernetes, meaning no more VMs, no more FTPing things over, no more of this old traditional CI/CD process. They're going to go all in on Kubernetes. I really respect Intuit for doing that, because it takes a lot of guts to actually just go all in like that as an entire company as a whole for the size that Intuit it was. At that time, Kubernetes was still an emerging product here. There were like kind of very early adopters in their adoption journey. And so they needed to create a tool set in order to onboard, one, their applications, and two, provide kind of a good user experience for their end users, as great as Kubernetes is. At that time, even today, a lot of developers don't really know much about the Kubernetes primitives, and they don't care, and quite frankly, they shouldn't care. They should be focusing on developing their applications. So Hong, Jesse, and Alex were part of the team. They spearheaded the creation of the Argo project, where they ran Argo in production at scale with all the cuts and bruises that you would in a production environment over there at Intuit. They took those lessons learned and they built the Akuity platform. And then later on created the Cargo project. Cargo was actually a brainchild inside of Intuit. They actually they came up with the original ideas at Intuit. They didn't really have the time to do it there because the Argo project was taking off. But now they've always seen Cargo as a cornerstone of what the Akuity platform or what this platform provides. So Oh, sorry. You should be able to see my screen now. Cool. So, apologies for that. So uh, the Akuity platform was created by the Argo and the original creators of the Argo and Cargo project. So one quick thing, something that I've been working very, very hard on, me and Andrew Block from Red Hat, we've been working really, really hard on this. Actually, I've been working on this book since before I joined Akuity, and Akuity was kind enough to sponsor this book. And Akuity is now giving this book for free. So early access. So this is our early access book. So this is a rough copy of the book. Go ahead and scan the QR code here. If you're watching this later on, scan the QR code here. If you're in the chat, the Angelica is kindly enough to dropping that link in the chat right there. And I wrote this book with Andrew from Red Hat, taking all of our experiences working with customers, with our respective customers, getting them up and running with Argo CD. So we took everything that we've learned working over the years with Argo CD, and we wrote this book for you to get up and running with Argo CD, kind of like best practices, kind of out of the gate, things to look out for, all that good stuff. So thank you to Akuity for sponsoring this. I hope you all download it. This is a early release, so check back often because it is going. We're hoping to get a full release later on this year, around the time of KubeCon North America. We'll see. Let's cross our fingers. But this is an early release, so you kind of get like a sneak peek before the actual book comes out all finished. So go ahead, scan the QR code, download for free. Weekend reading for a lot of you. And let me know, right? Let me know what you think about it. So the agenda today. So the agenda, we're gonna go over a quick overview of an application project, what an Argo CD App Project is, what kind of the philosophical reasoning why we need an Argo project, and kind of like how Argo CD actually works, and why we need the Argo project application project. And then we're going to get hands-on with the workshop, right? So what we're going to do is how to best manage the default project, creating and managing projects, multi-tenancy with projects using RBAC, right? So we're going to get deep into the weeds on multi-tenancy and how that works with Argo CD, how to configure a global project, and then how to scope clusters and repositories to specific projects, right? So it's a very, very powerful thing at project. So this is what I'm going to go through today. Later on, we're going to go over the prerequisites, but really there's only two prerequisites. One is that you have a GitHub account, and two, that you have enough credits to run code spaces. The free tier of code spaces should be enough to run this workshop. I've ran this workshop multiple times, testing it on my own throughout last week, and I still have credits. So don't worry if you don't have credits. Sorry, if you have the free tier should be more than enough to run this workshop. So let's get started. Right. So app project overview, what you need to know about the Argo CD app project. Like I said before, Argo was created to onboard applications at Intuit, which means it's really an abstraction of Kubernetes. I always seen Argo CD as like the first attempt at an IDP, right, an internal developer platform. It's really the without them knowing is kind of what they built with Argo CD. And again, it's meant to onboard teams to Kubernetes, right? Let's abstract away all these things like what's a service and how it relates to a deployment, what's an ingress and how it relates to a service, what's a replication, replica set, homoset replication controller. That's how long I've been. The thing with Argo CD is kind of it was meant to be kind of a user experience UI, right? It helps with issue and triage with the UI. I always say that Argo is the best Kubernetes UI, just full stop, right? We don't even if you're not like buying all in to GitOps, right? If you don't turn off all the GitOps goodness with Argo CD, it's still kind of the best UI out there, right? And that was the idea with Argo CD from the ground up. you need it was created for the need of being able to manage Kubernetes and manage your applications with Kubernetes with this friendly UI, right? Um, and so with that, what it was meant to do is to be the interface into Kubernetes, right? That's philosophically is meant to be the interface with Kubernetes. So everything goes through the API, and we're kind of go over high level what the API is used for in Argo CD. And the idea is you don't have kubectl access. So there's a lot of things out there. Philosophically, I am against apps in any namespace because you shouldn't really have kubectl access anyways, right? So that's kind of like my GitOps philosophy. I can see the value in it, but the idea behind Argo CD and the idea behind GitOps is that you don't have kubectl access. So everything goes through the API. You have no kubectl access. That was kind of the spirit of Argo CD. And with that, Argo CD by default, and I'll go through this a little deeper, has cluster admin privileges because, and you probably want to keep it that way. Like, how are you supposed to manage your Kubernetes infrastructure without being able to access the things, right? And there's obviously secure ways to do that. So I'm not saying no securities, but the idea is that Argo CD has cluster admin, and by default, it works that way as well. So, and Argo CD workflow from a high level works this way, right? So if you're a user, whether you're using the UI or the CLI, you're going through the Argo CD API. So the Argo CD API kind of sits there as your interface into Argo CD, and then by proxy, your interface into the Kubernetes cluster that you're managing. So you either clicking around the UI, or whether you're running commands, you're going through the Argo CD API, and Argo CD is acting on your behalf. And so it's doing things like telling the repo server to do a git clone, and then the repo server does the git clone, for example, and renders that out. The application server takes that payload from the repo server and then applies it directly to the Kube API. High level, this is what it works. There's more little kind of moving parts, intricate parts, but this is kind of from the high level what happens when you interact with the Argo CD API. So Argo CD acts on your behalf, right? So this is kind of like your your intermediary between like the API, what's happening in the API, and what's happening in the on the back end, right? And so you're interfacing with this API that's actually doing things on your behalf. The thing is that this here, the application server applying to the Kube API server, happens as cluster admin, right? So by default, it happens through cluster admin. So and so that is kind of like philosophically and the default what happens, right? Cluster admin, Argo. So if you install Argo and you start messing with it and start deploying things, you're doing things as cluster admin, right? So that's why we have the Argo CD App Project, right? So the Argo CD App Project is a unit of tenancy, right? So basically, it's meant to be a multi-tenant system. It's meant to have a lot of users and a lot of admins, a lot of end users, a lot of developers accessing Argo CD either through a CLI or through the UI or even API calls, right? And so the app project is kind of where you scope down things, right? So you give access to users and groups to an app project. So you kind of you kind of create an app project and you give it access to specific users and or groups. And then you can have really granular RBAC policies, right? You can say, hey, this person can sync this application, but they can't delete it. Or you can go all the way down and saying this person cannot sync this specific deployment, right? But everything else is okay. Like you can get like actually pretty granular. And so then you have kind of points of control, right? With Argo CD App Projects. So you have you can give repository access to certain people, right? So like you can say, hey, this Git repo, this user can sync from, but they can't sync from this Git repo, right? So you can kind of get repository access depending on what you need. And you can control destinations, right? You can say, all right, this user can sync this specific cluster to this specific namespace, but not this namespace. Or I have full admin access to this cluster, but read only to this cluster. So you can kind of get in the app project, kind of get a unit of control there. And then you can allow and deny Kubernetes manifests. So specifically, you can the GVK, right? You can say, this group in kind cannot be synced, or it can be synced but not deleted, that sort of thing. And then you can set up sync windows, which we won't go over too much in depth in sync windows, but basically is a way to anytime someone writes a sync operation, you can only allow it in a specific time, like let's say overnight, for example. So the thing with the Argo CD App Project is that this is an administrator type of action, meaning that an administrator creates and manages Argo CD App Project. So this is kind of different. So I came from the Red Hat world, right? I'm a Red Hat person, help bootstrap the OpenShift project there. That's very, very different from OpenShift. So for those who are using OpenShift, that an end user can create projects. That's not how it works in Argo CD. Argo CD specifically, so you have to change your kind of frame of thinking, is an administrative process, right? So that's kind of the Argo CD App Project from a high level. It's kind of really your point of control, your kind of point of way to manage end users, right? So yes, the sync is happening as a cluster admin, the access is happening cluster admin, but your point of control is in this app project and the app and then the RBAC that is set up here in the Argo CD App Project. So that is high level. So let's I'm gonna pause real quick to see if there's any relevant questions. And then we're gonna jump into the workshop here. Blah blah blah. Let's see here. This is the arch of Argo CD is different. Would you elaborate how? Can you? I'm not sure what that question is. Does the Argo CD have user management? Yes and no. Argo CD UI, and you'll see in a little bit, you can't really create users in Argo CD UI. And everything's really done via GitOps, right? Or configuration management. You like if you're going to set up SSO or anything, you have to set that up using the config maps. If you want to create a user, you can't do that through the UI. There are certain things you can do through the UI, but user management isn't one that you can do through the UI. So, is there any documentation containing Akuity? I believe the differences features between Akuity and Argo CD. I'm pretty sure Angelica can drop a link there. Yeah, so the recording will be available after. So just all of you that know that this recording will be available after, and the repo we're using will be available after. So you can actually do this at your own leisure, or if you want to do it right now and then do it later, you can do it later as well. Slides as well. We can put the link to the slides as well in the YouTube link. So Angelica, remind me to give you a PDF of that slide. All right. Cool. Let's see if there's any more questions here. Okay. All right. So with that, a few things we'll need, right? Again, like I said before, GitHub account, right? We're doing this with GitHub Codespaces, so you absolutely need a GitHub account. Pretty sure everyone has a GitHub account. If you plan on using Akuity, you're going to need one anyway. Using Argo CD or Akuity, right? By extension, you're going to need a GitHub account anyway. Enough credits for Codespaces. The free tier should be fine, like I said before, but some people use Codespaces more than others, so just kind of make sure you have, enough credits to run this workshop. I think I used maybe 15 cents or something when I ran this last time, so you should be okay if you have enough credits there. So I do ask you that you're familiar with Argo CD, right? So this is a masterclass, right? So if you find yourself kind of getting lost, we do have a course and I can actually hear Angelica frantically looking for the link. But we do have a course on getting started with Argo CD and all of that. She'll drop that into the account here. So, oh, this is a interesting question, but I'll get to that in a bit. So, Argo CD, you need familiar with Argo CD, you need to get familiar with GitHub, you need to be familiar with Kubernetes, you need to be familiar with the CLI. So RBAC, someone said RBAC is just CRUD, right? Create, read, user update on Argo CD for Kubernetes cluster, right? It's not related to account or user management. That is a weird way because you really asked two unrelated questions. So yeah, so when you do RBAC, it's really you're hitting the Argo CD API, and it's really kind of like a CRUD operation, right? You're going to create something, you're going to read it, you're going to update it or delete it, right? Then a Argo for Kubernetes cluster. So the answer to that is yes. It doesn't accept Kubernetes what do you call it? API, hits, right? So you can't tell it, you can't give it, a Kubernetes a CRUD operation and it understands that. No, it actually has its own CRUD, right? It separates that for you. It's not related to account or user management. So Argo CD does check which user is trying to do the CRUD operation. So I'm not sure what is asked there, but it is related, and you'll see why. And so, someone says best practice for using Argo CD image updater, use Cargo. So, so familiar with Argo CD, GitHub, Kubernetes CLI. You will need to go to this Git repo URL here. If you want to scan the QR code, that'll take you there on the phone if you want. You can use this bit.ly link, right? Bit.ly masterclass app project, or if you can type fast enough, you can type that out. Angelica is dropping that link into the chat here. So that link will be there in a bit. I'm going to leave this up for a little bit, see if there's any more questions coming up here while we're getting this up and running. All right. Everyone's typing? Make sure everyone's typing. Cool. All right. So I think I have this here. Oops, my chat just disappeared for whatever reason. Okay. So everyone see my screen still? Angelica, thumbs up. Give my screen. Cool. All right. Yep. Screen is on. All right. So you should have something that looks like this, right? The GitOps Masterclass, it actually goes through the steps here. So in case how to set this up, in case you come to this later, but you can watch this video because we're going to do this together. And so what we're going to do first, I'm going to go a little bit off script. Sorry, Angelica. We're going to set this up and let this run in the background, and then I'm kind of going to go over the project's application here. So if you're on this link, right, you're sitting right here. You should be here unless you're like me and like to click around. If you are, that's fine. Come back here. Give you a few seconds. And on the top right here, it says use this template, right? So this little green little button there says use this template. Again, if I'm going too fast, the instructions, scroll down, the instructions tell you what to do with arrows and everything. Click on use this template and then select create new repository, right? Don't do this, do this. So Angelica, if you're watching, don't do this, do this, create new repository. And so once you create a new repository here, it should take you to create a new repository page here. Owner, choose, something that makes sense to you. I'm going to choose my username. I recommend you do the same. You may be part of other orgs. I didn't test it by using org, so if you pick an org, it doesn't work. We're just going to tell you to redo it. So just pick your own username and give it a repository name, right? Give it something that makes sense. Give it, or you can just do it foo if you like. I'm going to do Masterclass app project. So something unique, something that's not already taken. Do that. Leave it public for now. and then click create repository. This will take the template and create a repository based on this template. This should take a few seconds. So now you should be here. I'll give it a few seconds to let some people catch up. So that should have created your own Git repo here based on that template. So now we're here. What's really, really cool here is that you can click on code. And then some of you, it might come here, but make sure you click on the code spaces tab, right? So the code space is here. There shouldn't be a code space running here. And so you create the code spaces on main. So you do that. So code spaces, click on that, click on create code spaces on main. For those who are joining late, you missed a lot. Make sure you read the README. So anyone who's joining now or anyone who's joining later, if anyone in the chat wants to help me, if anyone joins later, say do not do this on that repo. You're gonna have a bad time. Do follow the instructions on the README. So we're here. So code spaces tab here, create code spaces on main. You go ahead and click that. I had some trouble with Firefox. Doesn't look like I'll have trouble now. This will actually take a while to run. It took me like about a minute. Had Daniel here from Akuity said it took him 3 minutes. Not sure why it took him 3 minutes. People telling me various things. I think it just depends on your internet connection or whatever. So let's leave this running in the background for now because this will take like a few minutes. So it's setting up the environment. And so see Angelica for what is it? Why did it take me 1 minute? I don't know. So we're gonna go over projects and projects in general, right? So this is a very, very valuable link. This is the official Argo CD docs for app projects. And it kind of goes over kind of some of the stuff we're doing here. And it's also a good frame of reference on kind of like most of what we're gonna be doing here, right? And so there's things like I guess source repos, right? What are you allowed to deploy from? The namespaces, right? So the namespaces that you're allowed to deploy to, right? So destinations. So we have the what they call whitelist, right? So an allow list and a deny list, right? And so notice how it says cluster resource and namespace resource. So you can actually differentiate between like a namespace resource, like a deployment or a cluster resource, kind of like a CRD. And so and you can manage projects. Mainly managing projects is going to be happening from the YAML. So I do it from YAML. I'm a kind of a GitOps purist here. I always kind of just use YAML, the YAML or the manifest here. You can do it through the Argo CD CLI, right? So and those are going to be your two main ways of doing it, through the CLI or through YAML. Like I said before, the API is a little bit limited. The UI is a little limited in terms of management, right? And so, except for projects, right? Users, yeah, projects you can actually create through the UI as well, but kind of like user management, doing RBAC, that's all. It's better doing it through YAML. So, and so, you can do things like deny, allow, that sort of thing, destinations. What's really, really cool is we're going to go through a lot of these, right? Do project roles, being able to do that. RBAC with projects, right? We'll be doing that. Sync windows, we'll be doing that as well. So the app project, there is also a declarative setup. Here, I'm kind of going off script, so sorry. So project specification, this is kind of the spec. And this is the documentation, the spec, and kind of gives you one, an example, and two, kind of like all the privileges and things like that you can do. This is a sync window, right? As well. We're going to be going through some of this stuff here. So Well, that being said, let's take a look at here. Cool. So let's verify that this is up and running. So what I like to do is I like to there's this little arrow here up in the corner. I don't know if you see it. I'm actually gonna make this a little bigger. There's a little arrow here up in the and it brings that up here. I like to do that. Gives me more terminal. We're not going to be really using the files. We're going to be going back and forth. Um, and so there's that there. So if you're going to do kubectl uh, get nodes, you should see a single node running. That is awesome. And so you should be running Kubernetes 1.32. Also, if you do kubectl get pods Argo CD, right? kubectl get pods -n Argo CD. You should see Argo CD up and running. That's already been installed for you. There's also Argo CD, I think account, and then the count is yeah, get user info, right? And so you should see Argo CD up and running with kubectl get pods -n Argo CD. Argo CD account get user info. It should say that it should already logged you in as admin, so it's cool. And then do a kubectx. So kubectx. And it shows that there's two contexts, right? The one that's K3D dev should be in green. That should be in green. If it's not, I'd be very I'm going to give a prize if it's not, because if this works for me, it has to work for everything else. It's a script, right? So K3D-dev should be green. On the top here, there's a tab that says ports, right? So there's a tab called ports. Go ahead and click on that tab. And then you should see here. Oh, there is. One second. I did run into a problem. So let's get SVC. Yeah, you see two ports. Yeah, I'm the only. It looks like it's only my issue. Um, so let's go back here. Do two ports. There's for you those of you who uh are you here? You should have two ports. One of them has this number. The other one says Argo CD dashboard. Go ahead and click on the little globe, right? So go ahead, click on the globe. That should take you to the Argo CD UI. So again, click on the ports tab. You should have two ports. One of them, one being the Argo CD dashboard, and then click on that globe. So the little globe button there, click on that globe button, and it should open the Argo CD UI in a new tab. I may have to reload my code space. All right. So let's see here, see what it tells me. Mine insists one port. So I'm going to do, oops. Okay. Uh, yeah, I am just thinking quietly. Let me see here. Argo CD, and then the command is account get user info. All right, I am logged in. I may have to do this manually. 1 second. Okay, get pods. The Argo CD is running. Okay, get pods. I'm quietly I may have to restart my my dev container, which is fine. Let's go. So if you're running into issues like me, let's delete this. All right, awesome. No code space, create the code space. Let that run. We're kind of watch paint dry here a little bit. Yeah, recreate this workspace. Yeah. When in doubt, right, just recreate it. This is why we have the code space, is that we can quickly create and destroy. So for those of you who are, this is actually a good opportunity. Those of you who joined late, the link was dropped, but I'll go over real quick here. When you say use this template, create a new repository. So when you're at that template, create a new repository, and then you will it'll drop you into this create new repository uh, uh, section here. Right, select your owner, select your username, give it some unique name, right? Click create repository. So select code spaces, right? In your repository that you used from this template, create the code spaces tab, right? So click on the little code, click on code spaces tab, and then click on create code spaces in main. And then when it's up and running, don't do anything yet, right? Looks like my code space is taking a while to come up. Maybe I did run out of credits. We'll see. But it'll co-op, it'll do a create command and a post start command. So those two things should be up and running. And then in the end, you should have something that looks like this here. So you'll see here it coming up. And then, yes, you'll see like what I see here, post create command. And then the other would be post start command. And when those two things are finished, it'll drop you back into the command line here to back to so where you can run commands here. Here we verified the code space. You do get nodes, kubectl dev here. And then all of that here. Those of you who want to log into the UI, sorry, Dan, that's not the password. For it's the password is admin. So for those of you who want to log in to the Argo CD UI, username is admin and password is also admin. So or it should be password. I'm not sure. I did either admin or password, one of the two. So if it's not admin, it's definitely password. Oh yeah, I did right here, password. Yeah, the password is password. All right, awesome. And I should read my own my own README, where it says you can log in with password and you should be able to be there here. So I have still my post start command running. So if I used to running late, you got an awesome chance to catch up here. All right, awesome. So mine is done. Let's see. Now I have 2 ports. All right, let's give a round of applause. All right. Yeah, I have 2. Yeah, congratulations. I have 2 ports now. Now I'm caught up with everyone else. So yeah, so it's if you're here, you should see 2 and then if you click on open browser, this will open up your UI. Username is admin and password is password, not admin, like I said before. Sign in there. Don't save that login. And so it should be there. Cool. So we're here and we're here. Go back to the terminal. So you have this the terminal here and then you have the UI. All right. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the default project. So default project. So if you do Argo CD, sorry, not Argo CD, kubectl. Actually, let me set some niceties here. You don't have to do this. I'm a Vim guy. So So you do a kubectl get app. You hit tab a few times. Application. Let me see here. kubectl. What is the API? Yeah, resources. Grep app. App projects is the name. Okay. So if you do kubectl get app projects in the Argo CD namespace, right? You should see one that says default, right? So and like I said before, this is here. Oops. Where's my copy? Oh, it didn't copy. Okay, copy. Oh, I think it's because, yeah, there we go. So get app projects, Argo CD, it says default. So by default, there is an app project that's created for you, right? And so if you do that and you do -o YAML, oops, you should do Argo CD default -o YAML. So let's do that again. So kubectl get app projects -n Argo CD space default -o YAML, and you should get the default project. So a few things to note in this default project. One is that it allows everything. So cluster resource whitelist allows everything. Destination, it allows everything. Source repo, it allows everything. It basically allows you to do whatever you want. And the idea behind this is for ease of use, right? To get you up and running, to be able to kind of just deploy, use Argo CD from the get-go. It is my recommendation to basically disable this project, right? Either disable it or very and restrict it very to specific things, right? So I like to disable it, but restricting it is also a valuable thing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna on the left-hand side here, there is a directory called projects, right? A little folder here, projects. If you click on the down arrow, and there is a file called project restricted default. Click on that and it'll open this here. This is what is recommended. This is what I recommend, right? Basically, an empty set of anything means deny. It's an implicit deny, right? So there's always an implicit deny. So leaving it empty means you're denying it, right? So and then I do that for source repo, source namespaces, destinations, and then also namespace. And I'm kind of doing kind of a backwards thinking here, but I'm basically saying deny everything, right? So I have a deny list and a deny basically everything. So this locks down the default project. This is a recommendation. You don't have to lock it. You don't have to disable it like this. It's a very normal use case, and I'll show you the next example. But it's a normal use case to have the default project only for things like a Bootstrap application or an app apps application that it's something kind of like a point of entry for administrators for like someone who set this up to be able to deploy cluster add-ons and things like that. So but for the purposes of this workshop, we're going to disable the default project. And we do this easily by applying this. Actually, I might do a replace. We'll see what happens when I do a replace. So if you do kubectl replace, you may want to do an apply. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do projects, and then I'm going to do a project restricted default. So that basically replaces that, and it basically now locks down the default project. So if we maximize that and we do the get operation again, right? You can see now it replaced it with that configuration. Right now, if I try to deploy anything to the default project, it will be denied. It will be nothing. I essentially rendered this Argo CD installation useless. And as you can see, why initially we decided to just have a default project that is open to everything for ease of use, because now that I do this, the Argo CD is basically useless. So, so what I like to do is, so you can either do this to this default to the default project when you install your Argo CD installation, or you can do what I do is like I have a specific project for my administrative tasks. So if on the now on the left hand side here, if you click on something that says project cluster add-ons, so this cluster add-ons um, is basically I have a resource whitelist, basically allow everything in this specific cluster, meaning so in cluster here, for those who don't know, means the cluster Argo CD is running on. So and it's kind of short for in cluster. Server, this is the server for the cluster that Argo CD is running on. Yes, you need both name and server because that's more specific than like if you wanted to. If I didn't have server, if I didn't have this, anyone who tries to deploy to server here will get denied. So, this is kind of mix and match to be able to not be able to cover both use cases, right? In the future, this server thing will be gone. Don't worry about this now. Just kind of, for now, have both of them on, but in the future, it might not be a problem, right? Source repos. So this here, I explicitly am allowing only this source repo, right? So why is that? So I'm creating a project called cluster add-ons. So what are cluster add-ons, right? So it's kind of a generic term, kind of what we're using in the Argo CD community is cluster add-ons are things kind of like that make your cluster work, right? So like when you think about it, when you install a Kubernetes cluster, you don't just install a Kubernetes cluster and start using it, right? Like you need to install things like a cert-manager. You need to install things like Kyverno. You need to install things like some sort of service mesh, right? Something to make it your own corporate standard build. That's kind of what we call cluster add-ons, right? And that's when I created an app project called cluster add-ons to be kind of like my admin kind of bootstrappy type of project, right? And so you can create this kind of project. You can either create this kind of project or modify the default project to do something like this. Either way works. I like to be more specific, right? I just kind of disable the default project and I kind of create one that's more specific, like, oh, this makes sense, right? It's cluster add-ons, right? So before we apply this, we can actually look at this. If you go under settings and you go under projects, you can see that the default project's there. So now let's apply CTL. Actually, we're going to create projects, project cluster add-ons. We do that. The cluster add-on project is created. And now if we refresh this page, you should see the cluster add-ons there. All right, so you have cluster add-ons. Now the project, for those of you who asked before, cluster add-ons here, you can actually go here and start like editing things if you like. You can add a new project and start, modifying that there. I find it easier just to kind of have these templates and start using them. So the person who asked before, you can absolutely manage projects via the UI. I do it through YAML. Again, I'm a GitOps purist. So take all of that, all of my suggestions as from the viewpoint of a GitOps purist. All right. So now that we have that, let's deploy an application, right? So let's go to the applications folder. So there's a directory here called applications. And then there is a cert-manager, right? So there's app cert-manager, right? So this application here, let me make this a little smaller so you can see. So this application here, cert-manager, again, in cluster. Remember what I put there in the in cluster? This is again the repo URL what I allowed in the other one. Let me open the other one so you can see side by side. Cluster add-ons, and then where is it? cert-manager there. Okay, cert-manager. It says there. Remember, I'm allowing in cluster. Awesome source repo cert-manager there. And then I have here project default, right? So I have this set to the project default. Remember, I disabled the project default. So let's see what happens when I deploy this, right? Let's hopefully the demo gods are smiling on me. Let's hope the workshop gods are smiling on you. Let's do kubectl create of the applications, and let's do app cert-manager, right? So app cert-manager is created. Let's go to your application tabs here. It says unknown, unknown, right? There's 2 errors. Why are there 2 errors? Because you're not allowed to deploy the default, right? So this kind of shows you the power right away, right? This is the first unit, right, of this workshop. It shows you right away the power that you have to be able to create an application, right? And so, great question, right? So would you create that came down, would you create an app project per Argo CD application? So one Argo CD app equals one Argo CD project, one Kubernetes namespace? No. So right away, no, I wouldn't do that. I mean, you can, but depending on how your organization is, if you're the only one managing Argo CD, it might make sense to you to do that. But in general, in a multi-tenant system, you probably wouldn't do that. You would create a project for multiple apps, maybe. But it really depends on, I know it does depend, but what it depends on is who you're managing, right? Your group, right? So it actually really depends on the team that you're managing, right? You most likely than not, you will create an application is specified to either a specific user, a specific group, or a specific workload. Right here, this cluster add-on we're talking about a specific workload. So I'll show you how this works in a little bit, and then I'll come back to finishing up my thought here. So yeah, cert-manager, we saw that the default project, we locked it down. All right, great. So then let's actually make this usable, right? So then here we have this as default, cluster add-ons. That's the name of the project. So it's very, very easy here. We copy this, and then we go here and we replace default with cluster add-ons. Awesome. As soon as you change it, it should be updated, right? And if there's an M there, that means that you're good. It wrote it. So let's go back up and then go to your up arrow. And instead of create, let's do replace, right? Replace here. Let's go back. And this should start syncing, right? So this should start installing cert-manager, all of that. So to finish my thought, right, I created a project called cert-manager, Jacob. I created a project called cluster add-ons, and cert-manager is going to go in there. I'll create another application called Kyverno. I'll put that in there in that cluster add-ons. I'll create, the Istio one. I'll put that there. Like everything cluster add, anything meant for my cluster, that's what this app project is for. Later, we're going to create one for a group, right? So it all depends, right? So again, just to recap, app project per a user, which 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't do that, but sometimes, right? You would think more likely than not a group, right? A group, a group in your organization may have one or many projects, or the workload type, right? So what really is a deciding factor is RBAC, right? And we're going to go into RBAC in the next couple of workshop here. So actually, that's the very, very next thing we're going to go over is creating a user, right? So this workshop is not about users. It's not about user management. None of that. SSO, don't ask me. We might do one on SSO later. We might do one on user management later. We're only creating a user to show the RBAC capability of the app project, right? So I'm already stopping your question in the track. We're not going to go over user management in this specific workshop, but we are going to create a user, right? So creating a user. All right. Oops. 1 second. Come on. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to create a user. Yeah, before you frantically start typing. Angelica is going to paste in the command that I just ran. You don't have to run this command, right? Because actually I'm creating an account called Christian, right? If you want to do this manually, right? You can copy and paste the command that Angelica pasted and just change the accounts.user to accounts.whatever user you want to create, or just leave it as .user, whatever, right? Just remember that you're creating a user.user, right? Or you can do a kubectl edit in the Argo CD namespace, the config map called Argo CD config map, right? So I can do this. Oops. Yeah, invalid character. That's probably because I'll tell you right now, Zoom probably puts in a weird characters there. So you can do a kubectl edit Argo CD config map Argo CD -cm. You can do that. This is what I'm going to do. Kubectl, so edit Argo CD config map Argo CD config map. And let me do a set new. And then the line here, it should be line 7, but I'll highlight it there. You can enter this manually, right? So it says accounts. So like you can do open a new line here, space, do accounts dot, your username goes here, right? So you can do that. Accounts, dot let's Barney, right? Whatever name, and then colon and what they have access to. So this is very, very specific. There's API key and login. I did both just for the simplicity, but you can just do login, right? Which this only means they get able to log in with the CLI and UI, but you won't be able to use this user's accounts token for workflows, right? Like for an actual API key robot account, right? Or something like that, right? So so that's the way to do that, right? So again, line 7, or we're basically right under the data line. Do accounts dot and then whatever your username is. I'm put minus Christian, colon space API key, colon login, right? And really this is what you want to add to the config map here, right? So you do accounts dot user API key colon login, right? I'll do that. And so we are not doing groups this time around, and groups cannot be added manually. So that's why you cannot add groups. You have to use SSO for groups. So something I learned. So we have the user accounts there, right? So I'm gonna quit that. So you should have that there, right? And so again, kubectl edit -n Argo CD CM, which stands for config map, and then Argo CD CM for config map, right? And so I put that in the chat. So if you scroll up a little bit, you'll be able to see the kubectl edit, the Argo CD file there. And then again, you need to, and I put this in the chat as well, accounts dot and whatever username you want it to be, and then colon, login, right? So you have that there as well. So once that's there, you'll know that you did it right because the following command will be successful or won't be successful, right? So what we're going to do is that creates the user, but it doesn't create the password, right? We're going to do the Argo CD. We're going to use the Argo CD CLI to create the password. Again, just to repeat, this isn't a workshop about creating and managing users. We have to do these steps in order to go back to our regularly scheduled app project, right? And again, I wouldn't create local users, right? I would use SSO. So you probably wouldn't do this normally anyway, right? So first, check that you're admin. You should still be admin, but do account get user info. It should say username admin. If you see this, awesome. You're so far doing great. And then Angelica will paste this here. But you're gonna do Argo CD account, update password, account, and then the username you use. I use Christian. Some of you used user, some of you put your own username, but I do that as well. And then do new password, and then I'm just gonna use password, but you can use whatever password you like, right? So I'm gonna leave this up here for a little bit. And let a lot of people catch up here. So remember, if you want to create the user, Argo CD, you have to edit the config map. So I have that up here, Argo CD edit, Argo CD CM, Argo CD CM config map. So that's up there. And then you would create, you're going to add the user there. So, all right. Once you do that, I have to enter the user, the password for the admin, right? For this to go through. Password. And then password is updated, right? All right. To go again, kubectl edit, Argo CD CM config map. So you have that there. And then under data, right? Space. You have accounts dot, I put Christian, but it could be accounts dot whatever, right? You like. It could be there. And then colon, and it's to have API key, comma, login. So pretty easy. I pasted that into the chat. So I will do that again, just so it's on top of everyone's mind. Yep. So accounts.user.API key. So I'll write to accounts Christian API key login. So once you do that, write that file out. And then you do Argo CD account, update password, account, new password. And if you want to automate this, yes, you can. You can do account password, update password, and I believe you can just do password. Let me see here. Maybe. I don't think you can. Oh, you may just do a yes. I'm not sure. You would have to read that. I think maybe you just do a Y. Yeah. You probably can't do that. So once you're here, you should have a user created. Let's test this by clicking log out and log in as your user. Cool thing. Remember the cert-manager app that we added? This user or the user you just created shouldn't be able to see that. And if you click on user info, you should see the username and then whatever user you set up as, right? So it should say whatever. Let me make this a little bigger. The username there. So again, if you log in as your user, go to settings. Oops, sorry, user info, and it should have your user info there. All right. So I will pause here. If you need any more the commands here, Angelica's typing them out. Scroll up to see any of the configurations. We've been posting that again. So, and again, this recording will be available afterwards with all the repos already there, right? So we should all be here. I will leave this here for a few seconds that people catch up. And while people are catching up, and then what we're going to go over here is that we're going to give this user we just created. So I'm going to give my user Christian the ability to manage projects and then manage applications that you can deploy to this project. So and it's going to get a little weird with RBAC because app projects work with groups and we're not creating a group. So here you're already seeing kind of the issue, but how we're going to make it work, you'll see how it works, right? So for now, so this here, the person you created, the user you created should be here. Most of you should be here. While people are catching up, I'm going to click on settings and I'm going to click on projects. I don't have a project at all. And then I can try to create a new project, but it won't let me. It shouldn't let me. Yeah, so it shouldn't let me, right? Um, so this here, I have no projects assigned to me. If I go to settings, repositories should be also, yeah, I'm not able to do anything, right? So this is brand new user, not be able to do anything. So now what we're gonna do is what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a workload project. So on the left-hand side here, you click on workloads, right? So this is a project here. Um, I'm going to create a project that my user Christian is going to be able to access and deploy workloads on, right? Um, um, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to say the allow list. I'm going to say group everything, kind everything, right? But again, you can scope those down if you like. Destination in cluster, right? And then server as well, right? In cluster and server and any namespace, right? Again, you can scope those down as well. Source repos, right? I'm gonna actually pin this user Christian down to his own repository, which he has here, which is my repository. I'm gonna scope him down to only be able to deploy there. And then I'm gonna create a role, right? So this role is how basically I'm gonna assign RBAC from this project to this specific user, right? And so for now, I'm going to show you the policies, and I'm going to go back up to group, and I'll explain that as well in a little bit. So policies, right? P stands for policy, right? In the project, workloads, right? So basically, that's what I'm doing here. Project workloads. Assign custom role, project role, which is the name of the role here. For projects, I want to be able to do get, right? I want to be able to get projects, but like not all projects, just the specific project workload. And then this is what I'm going to allow it, right? I'm going to allow the get operation to workloads. And then also what I'm going to do is my policy, again, the same thing, project workloads, custom project role, right? So it's proj, colon, the name of the project, colon, the name of the role. What object? Applications. What operations? Everything in this case. Everything in what? In prod is, and then this is here projects slash app name, right? So here project workload slash app name, every app here, right? Because this is going to be for this user. This is kind of their user's kind of project here. And I'm going to allow it, right? So basically I'm going to allow them to perform any action to any application in the workloads. And I'm allow them to get workloads kind of because it's kind of weird. You have to like allow them to list get the workload, get the project in order for them to manage the project, even if you explicitly allow them to get everything else. So RBAC configuration. Some of you were going to ask what verbiage structure, blah blah blah. Right. First, very very easy. You have all the documentation and all the actions available to you in this doc. What action, so certain actions are available to certain objects and certain objects it just doesn't make sense, so it's not available, right? Like application sets, there isn't a sync option for application sets, so there's no reason for that to do that here. For example, there's for you to view logs, it doesn't make sense to sync, so there's no verbiage, so you can only get logs, right? So things like that. This is here. This RBAC model structure is based on the syntax is based on Casbin, right? Casbin is a Go library that is used right for RBAC essentially, right? Access control models. It's a generic library, and it's what is used at Argo CD. So you don't have to know a ton about it, right? So if you are curious, right, about how RBAC works in Argo CD, like if you really want to get deep into the weeds, there's a link to the RBAC configuration, and it's Casbin. If you want to take a look at that, go ahead and take a look. But really, if you really just care about like administrating Argo CD, take a look at this. This will explain a lot to you, right? So that's kind of the RBAC structure. And for the project, again, it's the policy. I'm going to do proj, P-R-O-J, colon, the name of the project, colon, the name of the role, what object, right, you're going to do this policy on, what verbiage, right, like get, update, delete, right? So here in this case, I'm doing star. The name of the project / the name of the application. Here, we're doing all applications, and I'm going to do allow. So here, let's look at the elephant in the room. It says groups. So you may not be able to see it here, but we'll see. I'm going a little bit off script here. So here I want to attach it to the group Christian, right? So you're asking, Christian, you said you didn't create any groups. Like, how can we assign it to a user if groups are the only thing that is allowed here in this app project? So actually, the RBAC only works on groups. So if you do ID here, Argo CD conceptually, I'm not saying this is the way it is, but conceptually follows the same rules as a Unix file system or a Linux file system here, is that when you create a user, there's an automatically corresponding group to it, right? So conceptually, you can think about it that way, right? When I create a user, I automatically get a group that is the same name as my user. So conceptually, you can see, okay, that makes sense. However, groups here is actually kind of misnamed. You have to think about it more as like an object, right? Or more of it as like if you're working on SSO, the DN, right? So the distinguished name, right? So this groups can actually be, whatever comes through in that ID, right? So this can be actually, if I want to edit this, right, I can do my at email.tld, right? Because like when you do an SSO login, that information comes through as well, along with information about your group mappings, your email, first name, last name, user ID, whatever, right? So that is a long way for me to say that we're not going to cover any of that, but just kind of little background. We're going to, in another maybe masterclass, we'll go deep on like doing SSO with usernames and blah, 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 right? And so for now, just conceptually think about it. Okay, in Linux, when I create a user, I get a corresponding user ID that's the same name. Same idea here. I created a user, so think about it coming through as I have a group with my username in it. That's not exactly how it works, but conceptually you can think about it, and that's how it works. I'll get deep into that later. So now let's apply this, right? So let's create this. Let's do kubectl create and let's do projects, and this project workloads that is created. Now, if I go under settings and I go under projects, I should be able to see now. Now I'm able to see that workload project. And now I should be able to create an application, right? And so as a user, right? And so here, there's a few ways to do this. I'll show you the simple way, and then I'll show you the way if you want to test it. So then you have an app here. Oops. Yeah, called app-simple-go in that directory. So there's a directory applications, app simple go. There's an application called simple go, and that goes into the project workloads, the one we just created. So what you can do is you can do a kubectl create applications app simple go, right? You create that, and you should be able to see that in the UI there. What you can do also is you can take all of this, copy that. Hopefully that works. And here you can click create application. You can click on edit as YAML. You select all paste. So now I'm doing this as the user Christian, right? So let me cancel this here. I'll let you guys do your copies if you want while you're doing that, or you can run that kubectl command. So you can run this. It's fine. But if you want to see it work, remember user info. Remember, I'm Christian here. And I just added the RBAC, so I'm able to create this application, edit as YAML, delete all of that, paste that, click save, and then click create. And now I'm able to create this application in this um, project that I created because I have RBAC. So if you remember the RBAC, the project RBAC, I'm able to applications. I'm going to basically do anything: create, update, delete, whatever, right? In this, so like if I want to create another application, let's create another application, edit as YAML. This is, you don't have to do this. This is just kind of showing you right now. So it's here. So instead of workloads, let's do cluster add-ons, right? And then I don't know, let's go simple go, I don't know, dash fail. Right, so this should fail. And then I'm not able to, me as an end user, I only have access to the workloads project and I can create those things there. So I have those going on there as well. So I created that, and that is the workloads there. I can try to deploy another source repo, but we're going to get into source repo later on. So, all right. So moving along. So we have plenty of time for questions and answers. I'm going to go over what we call global projects. Global projects is here. I have the ability to, when I create a project, I want certain things to happen automatically, meaning that there's certain things, certain settings in every app project that I want to happen to have it, right? So let me show you how that works here. Let me see here, configs. So in the config map, right? So in the directory, if you go down to the configs directory, let me minimize these here. So in the configs directory, there is a file called argo-cm.yaml, right? So this is we're going to patch the config map for Argo CD. So I'm going to have a global project. I want to say any project that I label with env equals prod is going to get, it's going to inherit this project. All right. So what does that project look like? Let's go to projects and let's go to, I believe this is project global, right? So I have this, so side by side here. So I have saying, okay, any project that is labeled env equals prod is going to inherit everything from global prod. And global prod, I'm saying, don't let anyone deploy anything to the kube system, right? So even admins, right? So like, let's say I am the Argo CD admin, but I'm delegating control to like my admin team. Even if they allow ***, if that app project, if I label that with prod equal with environment equals prod, it's not going to allow in the kube system. I don't want, no matter who creates what project, I don't want anything in the kube system without me explicitly knowing about it. So I'm just going to deny it all, right? And so how does that look like, right? And so if I look at the, if there's another file here called project-prod here, right? I'm going to just kind of like allow everything. But in this case here, I have a label env equals prod. So yeah, so great question. In the same way, can we restrict other namespaces? Yes, you can, right? So you can have other namespaces here that you want to restrict. Go ahead and take a look at the documentation to show you how to do that. But you can restrict different namespaces here. So in the documentation, it should show you how to do that. So the answer is yes. So we have global project, and then we have project prod. So let's create the project prod. Oh, first, we're going to need to patch. We need to update the Argo CD config map, right? And so when we do that is really easy. So you do kubectl. Angelica will post this patch Argo CD config map, Argo CD config map. patch file is in configs, Argo CD ConfigMap, and that is now patched. So Argo CD, kubectl patch -n, Argo CD, CM for config map, and then we're going to specify the Argo CD config map, and then we're going to do patch file --patch -file, and we're going to do config /Argo CD CM, right, for config map, which is the file that I just showed you right here. Yeah. So let's take a look at the config map. CTL get, actually I can just do get. Right, so I can do kubectl get -n Argo CD CM, basically the config map, and do YAML, and I should see the new global projects there. So I'm gonna leave this up for a little bit, pause for a little bit, let some people catch up so they can see the configuration happening here in real time, and I can take a minimum a small water. All right. So once you do that patch file, and once you do the get, and you should be able to see that configuration getting to you. Now we're gonna apply the global project, right? So this is my global project. This is actually not really a project, so to speak, other than this is gonna be like a template for things to inherit, right? That's why it doesn't have a lot of things. And in order to do that, we're gonna create it. So let me clear the screen here. I'm gonna clear the screen. Ready? Cleared. All right. So let's do kubectl create -f projects, project global, project is created. Now we're going to create the project prod, right? So the project prod has all of this stuff here. What we're going to do is a kubectl create projects project prod. Awesome. We created a project prod. And then, so now we create project prod. So let's do a kubectl get app projects. Oops. Argo CD, and then I believe it's called global -o YAML, right? So that's applied, right? No kube system. And so let's do we call this prod. All right, so you'll notice something right away. You're gonna think it's broken, but it's not. Notice how this is labeled env equals prod, and this says don't deploy in the kube namespace, but it doesn't show in the YAML, right? And so this is a bit of a I think bad user experience, bad UI. I've been meaning to fill out an issue. If someone wants to fill out an issue for this, I will +1 it so many times, right? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to URL here, right? And then back end this, you're gonna add API v1 projects prod global projects. And then, oh wait, I have to log out, log back in as admin. Well, at least you know that works, right? Right, because my user is, all right, so we're gonna do, API, I put it in the chat, but API /v1/projects/prod and the /global projects. And that'll show you here, if you see here in this destination here, you see that it does add it. So it basically adds it on the back end, is essentially what happens, right? And so that's what happens, right? So if you don't see it in the YAML, it's okay. There's no mutating webhook. I believe there should be a mutating webhook, but I guess that's for something to bring up to the community that adds this here. But don't think it's not working. It's actually working. You just need to see that API backend, right? And so that's global project. So anything labeled with env prod, any project labeled env prod is gonna deny deploying to the namespace called kube system, right? So that's what the exclamation point is, deny not, I guess, the not operator, not the namespace kube system, right? Cool. All right. So very, very last thing that I'm going to show is adding scoped resources, right? And so there is a scoped resources is basically like, okay, when I want a specific repository to be only be able to deploy to app projects that I specify. So for example, I have here, let's go to projects. Um, project scoped. There we go. So there's under project directory, there's an application called project scoped, right? So here I have, I'm going to do a scoped repo, right? And then this scoped repo here is the repository. I already added that in the source repo, right? Again, destination, all of this um, looks the same, except now there's a new configuration called permit only project scoped clusters equals true. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a scoped repo. We're going to have a scoped clusters, right? So scoped clusters is restrict apps in this cluster to only clusters scoped in this project, meaning like I can assign clusters to a specific project and then no one else can deploy into that. So first, let's add the source repo. Source repo. So pretty straightforward, right? When you create a secret, right, you do a git, you give it the URL, right, make sure it's labeled correctly, and then you do project in the name of the project, right? So we're creating a project called um uh scoped, right? So we create a project called scoped, and this basically YAML here only has access to that scoped project. So we'll create let's create the first let's create the project, right? So kubectl create project scoped. Boom. We got that. And then we'll do kubectl create configs scoped repo, right? So so we created that scoped repo. So let's open up our terminal here. So, and as an admin, this is me logged in as admin. If I go to user info, you see I'm logged in as admin. I see repositories. I only see I see the scoped repo here. Yeah. So if I log out and log in as that other user, and I go to settings and I go to repositories, I don't see that at all, right? Because it's scoped to that project, and this user doesn't have access to that project, right? So, let's go back as admin. And then so kubectl. Oh yeah, let's do uh let's go to there's a project. Yeah, scoped, right? No, that's not project. Where is the application? I should have an application. Yeah. So here I have an application, blue green, right? And I'm in the project scoped, and I'm deploying um that that application, right? And so um right now it's pointing to the destination namespace BGD and a cluster named managed, right? We don't have a new cluster, so we're going to create one. So remember in the beginning when you say cube CTX, right? You see this has green. Well, there's another cluster here called managed, right? And it's in the context, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Argo CD CLI. This is the simplest way. You can do this declaratively. I've done it declaratively, but setting up that YAML is honestly a pain. So it's actually easier through the Argo CD CLI. So what we're going to do is we're going to do first, we're going to verify we're still admin. Let's see, account, get user info, right? Admin, awesome. I'm like 30% of the way there. So I'm going to do Argo CD cluster add and the name of the context, right? So we're going to add a cluster and it's going to add the name of the context, which the context is K3D managed, right? So you do K3D managed, right? I'm gonna do yes because we want this automated. Name, I'm gonna name this managed, right? Because it's a managed cluster. Um, and then uh, and then I'm gonna assign it to a specific project, right? If I don't assign it to a specific project, it implicitly Argo CD implicitly thinks that you want any project to be able to access this cluster. So in our case, we don't want that. So we want it in the projects called scoped, right? And so then that creates an app. If you go under settings, if you go under clusters, you should be now see two clusters, right? The in cluster and this new managed cluster with this Kubernetes API endpoint. And it should say successful, right? And so adding that cluster here, Angelica should be should drop in the command that I ran there, right? But again, it's Argo CD cluster add K3D managed. Yes, right? Because I just want to say yes to everything. The name, and I named it something, and the project is in the project scope. So now when I create this application, I have this destination managed, right? So now I have that new cluster managed, and then in the project scoped, right? So then now let's do now let's add kubectl create, and then applications. We're going to create the application called scoped here. That should be able to see it go. If you see here, it's in the destination. It's deploying into that cluster called manage in the namespace blue BGD, right? And it's using that repository that is scoped, right? So if I go to settings and I go to clusters, the managed cluster, as you can see, it should be names. Oh, actually, I think you can edit and then see no, you don't see the YAML. Okay. And so, but you can see the repositories, right? And it's scope to this project, right? So here, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, for this specific cluster and for this specific repository, only allow people who have access to the scope for this specific scope project to be able to deploy from and to these things, right? And so this is how you specifically scope that down, right? So if you want to, you do kubectl get pods dash capital A, and then what you want is in the context of K3D managed, you should see all the pods in this Kubernetes cluster, and basically there's only one workload on there, right? Is the one we just added using the scope repository. So to kind of recap, we have an app project called Scoped, and then we created a Git repository and assigned it to a specific project. And then when we created the cluster, we added it to the scoped project, right? And so for those that are curious, if you do kubectl get secrets in the Argo CD namespace, you should see a secret with that corresponds to your cluster, right? If you do -o YAML to that, you should be able to see the config, right, which is basically the what do you call it, the token and everything that is needed, and then the service account that is needed to connect to this cluster. But then you'll see project here, and that's like the name of the project, so it's scoped down to that project there. So all right, so that is actually officially more than 90 minutes. We had 90 plus minutes. We covered a lot, right? So we covered the ability to lock down the default project, right? Lock down or scope it way down. How to create projects, right? So like we created that cluster add-ons, which you can use it to use the same idea to modify the default project, but we lockdown defaults. We created cluster add-ons for like us for be able to deploy things like Kubernetes, things that we need. Um, we created a project and assigned it to a specific user, right? So we did RBAC with projects. All of that in this repo, so you can, go back and reuse this repo, use it for reference, right? Or delete it and use the template, right? Like we have that template that'll be there for the masterclass. We did create users and stuff like that. You don't really have to worry about creating users. We'll have another masterclass around maybe SSO and RBAC to go deep into that. But we created a global project. And so the global project, we created a global project that's able to be able to add kind of defaults into any time a project gets created. Remember, we did cube system. We never want anything in the cube system, so we created a global project. And then now we added scoped repositories and scoped clusters, meaning we were assigned specific repositories to specific app projects, and we can do the same with clusters as well. So as you see, you can get very, very granular with what you're doing with Argo CD, right? You don't have to use the default project. You don't have to use the default. You don't have to mess around with service accounts or anything like that. We can use the built-in mechanism for Argo CD to manage users, being able to take away kubectl from developers. Developers, I love you, but Argo CD and the Argo CD UI, if you can't do anything like that, fill out a ServiceNow ticket because the idea is that really no one should have access to the kubectl, even us admins, right? So if we do it right, we can have a very secure lockdown version installation of Argo CD. So with that, what I want to do, and this Samson, this is very, very very apt to your question, right? So thank you very much, Samson. Samson said, I would like to be in the next edition of this amazing production. Awesome, right? We'll be running this masterclass semi-regularly, right? I'm thinking maybe, 4 or 5 times a year. We're going to go deep on certain subjects, but do not miss out, right? So don't worry if you miss out on any of those master classes, right? We have everything will be on our YouTube channel, right? So subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll anytime we have one of these, we're going to upload it in YouTube with all the relevant links that you need so you can run it on your own. My goal is this is your guys are the first one to be here. So this is awesome. My goal is to always do this on GitHub code spaces, so that way you can just do it on your own. I'd love for you to attend live, right? So we can have this interaction. If you can't attend live, I still want you to be able to do this. Even if you attended live, to be able to do this later on at your own pace. So while watching the video side by side. So kind of a little tip for you. Don't miss out because to subscribing, because in case you missed the webinar, you will be able to run this on your own. So I'll stand by for a few more minutes here. Let's see if there's any question. There is something in the Q&A tab, but I actually don't see it come up here. Yeah, so normally how would you diagnose app projects that conflicted with each other? Interesting question, right? And so you're going to get a shared resource error on Argo CD usually when you have a shared resource error, meaning that like when someone tries to deploy something that's already being managed, right? One thing I actually didn't really go over is how to properly manage applications with app projects, because there's a tracking method, right? You can track with annotations, you can track with labels, or you can do a combination of labels and annotations, right? Probably beyond the scope of this here, but you will have shared resources and things like that. Also remember that app projects are an admin task, so really there should only really be a process behind creating app projects, right? I talked to one of our SREs. They do things like with Helm charts, and they store them in Git, and only people that have access to Git is able to create projects. So that was awesome question. So here, LDAP, you definitely can configure LDAP. It's not, that's maybe something I will do in another masterclass, but you can definitely configure LDAP. If you want to do some research, LDAP is done with Dex. Dex is built into Argo CD. So if you install Argo CD, you have Dex automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. But the configuration is a Dex configuration. So what Argo CD does, it uses Dex to broker that SAML communication between Argo CD and LDAP. So yes, you can. Maybe I'll run a workshop using LDAP or some sort of SSL, right? Book will launch. So I have the book here. So my book will launch. Book will launch later on this year. Right now it's an early release. So if you read it and you find mistakes, awesome. I already have people message me about the mistakes. However, we already know about the mistakes because it's going through the phase of like the book is written and now it's going through the tech review phase with O'Reilly. So as much as I appreciate you, your hundreds of messages finding mistakes in the book, we actually already know about it. But it is early release. Download it, read it. And then, yes, there's always scope for improvement. I absolutely agree. I'm actually thinking about the next iteration, right? The volume 2. But this is early release, but it'll be out later this year. So I'm hoping that I'm gonna do a book signing at KubeCon. So let's all cross our fingers that everything gets done before then, because the print process takes a while. So answer your question, later, probably Q4 this year, will be the default there. So awesome. Again, download the book. It's free. It's complete with errors. But then when the official one comes out, you'll have the access to that as well. And then remember to subscribe here, because all this stuff that we're doing with Masterclass is going to come up here with all the relevant links. So again, thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Angelica, for running all of this here. Angelica is the person behind the curtain here, making all this possible and also uploading things to YouTube at the end. So thank you, Angelica. Thank you everyone for attending. We hope to see you next time. And with that, we'll see you in the next webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.